Lena Davis stepped into the lobby of a modest branch of Davis Financial, the bank she had built with her own vision, her own hands, and her own unshakable belief in fairness. The late afternoon sun bled through the towering glass windows, casting elongated shadows across the polished marble floor. As the automatic doors whispered open, a rush of cool air greeted her, and the soft tap of her sneakers against the pristine tile echoed in the quiet space. Dressed in a simple cardigan draped over her shoulders, Lena was not here as the formidable CEO of a thriving financial institution. There were no high-stakes meetings, no pressing matters of corporate strategy. She was simply here as a customer, just another face in the crowd, needing nothing more than to withdraw money from her personal account. This bank, her bank, had been founded on the principles of accessibility and trust. It had weathered storms, economic downturns, and industry upheavals, always standing firm on its promise to serve people with dignity. She had personally chosen this location, overseen its launch, and even held the ceremonial ribbon cutting herself. But today, she was not a name on the corporate letterhead. She was just Lena, a woman in casual clothes here for a routine transaction. As she stepped up to the counter, she was met with indifference. The young teller, Sophie Matthews, barely acknowledged her, offering a cursory glance before returning to the glow of her computer screen. Lena cleared her throat, gently but firmly. "Hi, I'd like to make a withdrawal." Without lifting her gaze, Sophie slid a clipboard toward her. "Fill this out." The request was standard. Name, account number, withdrawal amount. Lena swiftly penned in the details. $5,000. It wasn't a staggering sum, but large enough to require identification. When she handed the form back, she noticed a subtle shift in Sophie's demeanor. The moment the teller's eyes flicked over Lena's ID, a flicker of hesitation crossed her face. The air in the room seemed to tighten. "One moment," Sophie said, her voice suddenly uncertain. Without another word, she clutched Lena's ID and disappeared behind a frosted glass door leading to the back office. Lena's fingers drummed against the cool marble counter, a slow, rhythmic tap. She had anticipated efficiency, professionalism, the respect due to any longtime customer. What she had not expected was the creeping sense of unease slithering its way into the interaction. A few moments later, Sophie re-emerged, but she was not alone. A tall, stiff-shouldered man followed close behind her. Brad Sullivan, the branch manager. His smile was tight, his eyes scanning her with a carefully controlled neutrality. "Good afternoon, Miss Davis," he greeted her, his voice lined with a formality that felt off. "I understand you're making a withdrawal." Lena nodded. "Yes, $5,000 from my personal account." Brad hesitated. "May I see your ID again?" A thread of irritation wound its way through Lena's patience. "I already gave it to Sophie," she replied, keeping her voice even. Brad ignored the remark. He held up her ID, tilting it against the light, scrutinizing it as though searching for invisible cracks in its authenticity. Lena's jaw tensed. She had been banking with Davis Financial since the day this branch opened, since before Brad had even been hired, since before Sophie had ever taken her first training course. "What do you do for work, Miss Davis?" Brad asked, his voice smooth but laced with something she didn't like. Lena blinked, her patience beginning to wear thin. "I run a bank." Brad nodded slowly, deliberately. "Personal or business account?" The condescension in his tone made her stomach twist. "It's right there on the form," she said, her voice now carrying an unmistakable edge. Brad turned her ID over in his hands, fingers tracing its edges as though feeling for something hidden beneath the plastic. The room had grown eerily silent, the usual hum of background conversations and shuffling papers, fading into an uncomfortable stillness. Lena could feel it now. This wasn't procedure. This was something else. Assumptions, bias, a test. "Miss Davis," Brad finally spoke, his voice maintaining a forced air of politeness. "Just to confirm, is this your first time banking with us?" Lena felt the breath leave her lungs in a sharp exhale. Her first time? The sheer audacity of the question sent heat crawling up her spine. "I've banked here since the day this branch opened," she replied, her words clipped, measured. "I approved its opening. I cut the ribbon myself." Brad offered no immediate response. Instead, he glanced at Sophie, then back to Lena, his expression unreadable. "And you're withdrawing $5,000, he repeated, slow and deliberate, as if the sum itself was cause for suspicion. "What kind of bank do you run exactly?" Lena's grip on the counter tightened. "I own this bank, Brad," she said, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "I founded Davis Financial." Silence, heavy and unrelenting. She watched as Brad absorbed the weight of her words, his fingers still gripping the withdrawal slip as though reluctant to release it. Even now, after everything, he refused to let go of whatever preconceived notion had led them here. Finally, he looked back up, his expression unreadable. "I'll need to verify some additional information before proceeding with your transaction." Lena's stomach clenched. "Additional information?" "I've given you my ID, my account number. My history with this bank is right there on your screen. What else do you need?" Brad hesitated, then delivered the final insult. "Can you confirm the amount of your last deposit?" Lena stared at him, stunned. Her last deposit? That wasn't standard protocol. It wasn't policy. It wasn't necessary. It was an obstacle, a manufactured barrier, placed in front of her for one reason and one reason only. "I don't have that number memorized," she said, her voice tight with restraint. "But you do. It's in your system. You can look it up the same way you would for anyone else." Brad remained unmoved. "It's just a precaution," he said, voice carefully neutral. Lena let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "A precaution? For what?" Her eyes locked onto his, refusing to let him look away. "This isn't about security, Brad. It's about something else." Brad shifted uncomfortably, but didn't relent. Instead, he reached for a clipboard, placing it in front of her with maddening composure. "You can fill out the form again if you like," he said smoothly. "It's just part of the process." Lena didn't move, didn't touch the clipboard. She simply stood there, her pulse thrumming beneath her skin, her patience a thread pulled too tight. She was done playing this game, because this wasn't just about a withdrawal. This was about proving she belonged, in a place that should never have questioned it in the first place. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears, her patience long since shattered. The weight of the moment crashed over her like a tidal wave, knocking the air from her lungs. This wasn't about policy. It wasn't about security. It was about something unspoken, something insidious. The truth of it settled deep in her bones, igniting a slow-burning fury that refused to be silenced. She stood frozen, her gaze locked onto Brad's, her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. No more forms. No more hoops to jump through. Not here. Not in her own bank. "Brad," she said, her voice a blade of ice slicing through the thick air. "This is absurd. I've been a customer since day one. I helped open this very branch, and now you're making me prove that I belong?" Brad's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes, a sliver of unease. Lena saw it, the subtle shift in his demeanor. He was beginning to understand. This wasn't a clerical error. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was something else entirely. "Check again," Lena said, her voice steel-wrapped silk. Brad hesitated. Lena didn't. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and hit record. The atmosphere in the lobby thickened, each second stretching unbearably as curious eyes turned toward them. The hushed murmur of customers died down, replaced by a weighted silence. "You're refusing to let me access my own account," Lena said, her voice clear, unwavering. "Even after I provided valid identification. Yet I see other customers walking in and out without the same scrutiny. Explain that to me." Brad's face paled. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. He wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't prepared for her. Lena shifted the camera, angling it toward the security guard who stood nearby, silent but present. "And you," she said, eyes locking onto his. "Why are you here?" The guard shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just here to ensure everything goes smoothly." Lena let out a sharp breath, something between a scoff and a laugh. "Smoothly? Or are you here to remind me of my place? To make sure I know I'm not welcome?" Brad fidgeted behind the counter, his gaze darting between Lena and the guard. The truth hung in the air, thick and undeniable. Lena leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. "You've made a grave mistake, Brad. A mistake that will cost you." His lips pressed into a tight line. "Miss Davis, if you just calm—" "I am calm." The words cut through the space between them like a knife. "But you've already decided that I don't belong, and now I'm going to make sure the world knows." She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over the room. Customers watched in stunned silence, some pretending to look away, others too mesmerized to blink. They weren't just witnessing a transaction gone wrong. They were witnessing a moment that exposed something far bigger, far uglier. Brad, cornered, made his move. A sharp, almost imperceptible press of a button beneath the counter. A distress call. Within moments, another security guard appeared. A towering figure, his stance rigid, his hand hovering near his belt. Lena didn't flinch. "You're really doing this?" she asked, voice cool despite the fire raging beneath it. Brad gave a stiff nod. "We want to ensure a smooth experience for all our customers." Lena arched a brow. "A smooth experience? That's rich." She let the words settle before delivering the final blow. "Well, Brad, I have news for you. I'm not leaving, not until you process my withdrawal. And if you think I'm going to let you treat me this way without consequence, you've got another thing coming." The weight of her words pressed into the walls of the bank. Brad was sweating now, his collar suddenly too tight, his professionalism cracking like fragile glass. The security guard hesitated, his once firm stance faltering. Employees looked anywhere but at Lena, their discomfort plain. Lena exhaled slowly, her voice a quiet storm. "Brad, one more time. You're denying my transaction despite my valid identification. You're escalating the situation with security. And for what? Because of how I look? Because I'm not dressed in a suit today?" A crack formed in Brad's mask. He opened his mouth, but Lena didn't give him the chance. "No more excuses," she said, her words razor sharp. "This isn't about policy, it's about bias, and now it's too late for you to fix it." She raised her phone again. "This is all on record now, Brad. Every customer here is a witness. So what's it going to be? Are you processing my withdrawal, or do I take this higher?" Brad's breath hitched. The room felt like it was holding its own. Lena reached for her ID, flipping it over with deliberate slowness. The name on it gleamed under the fluorescent lights. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, deadlier. "Let me introduce myself properly, Brad. I am Lena Davis, founder and CEO of Davis Financial." The realization hit the room like an earthquake. The security guard stiffened, his posture shifting from dominance to caution. Sophie, the teller, went ghostly pale. The customers shifted uncomfortably, their unease thick in the air. Brad's face drained of all color, his hands trembling as he reached for her ID, but hesitated, realizing he had lost all control. "I built this bank," Lena continued, her voice steady, unwavering. I approved the budget that gave you this job, and today I walked in as just another customer. You treated me like I was nothing. You lied to me, humiliated me, and now you have a choice. Process my transaction or deal with the consequences. Brad tried to speak, but the words died before they could form. His mouth opened and closed in silence. He had lost. Lena turned to the security guard. "And you," she said, her voice colder now. "If a customer isn't disruptive, your first step shouldn't be intimidation. Choose your orders wisely." The guard gave a small, uneasy nod. She turned to Sophie next. "You saw my ID. You saw my account number. And yet you still treated me as though I wasn't worth listening to." Sophie swallowed hard. "I was just following protocol." "Protocol that only applies to people like me?" Lena cut in, her voice like a blade. The room hung in thick silence. Lena had said enough. She turned on her heel, each step ringing against the polished tile. As she walked out, she knew nothing in that bank would ever be the same. By morning, the fallout had already begun. An emergency meeting, mandatory bias training, new policies. And Brad was gone. Change didn't come from words on paper. It came from standing up, refusing to bow, demanding what was right. And Lena Davis, she had done just that.